evening. Good to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate this Friday evening. The Omicron variant has reached India. It is now confirmed that 2 cases have been detected in the state of Karnataka. Many passengers who returned from foreign countries have also been tested. Samples for the positive ones have been sent for genome sequencing, not just in Karnataka, but in several other states, which means that there may be more cases. We're waiting for the final results on these, but we cannot take the situation lightly. I'm not trying to alarm you, but I am going to talk about this for the next 1 hour. And the reason is very simple. You need to arm yourself with facts. You need to arm yourself with information such that you don't and we don't spread panic. We are here tonight with our experts to allay your fears about what's coming and all your queries about Omicron. The Health Ministry itself has released a detailed FAQ about the new variant that will help you understand the extent of the spread of the virus, what we know so far about the virus, how it's behaving, what are the symptoms, and how transmissible is it. I'm going to take some of those questions to begin with. And as we proceed over the next 1 hour, we'll tell you a lot more about this new variant. Question 1. What makes Omicron a variant of concern? As you know, that's the term that WHO has used, calling this variant a variant of concern. This is because the variant shows a large number of mutations, over 30 mutations on this variant itself. And that, according to experts and scientists, is a concerning fact. The fact that a lot of these mutations are present in the key element of this variant that decides of how it responds to any kind of an attack is important. Why is it also a variant of concern? Because this is fast becoming a dominant variant in South Africa, where it was detected first. We don't know that that's where it started. But the number of these cases are fast overtaking the other prevalent variant, which was the Delta variant across the world so far. Can the current diagnosis detect Omicron? Yes, it can. The RT-PCR test, which is what we use, detects 3 specific genes, spike gene heavily mutated in case of Omicron. The results could indicate absence of the spike gene, that is how you get a confirmation on whether or not it is Omicron. And of course, there's a detailed genome sequencing that needs to be done for the final confirmation. But RT-PCR is the starting step to know. How concerned should we be? That's essentially what we're all asking for the past week, 10 days. But the WHO has declared this as a variant of concern, and their own analysis of the initial information suggests that there is high risk involved here, and which is why it needs to be tracked very closely. It needs to be studied very well. We cannot let our guard down until we know more about this variant. What precautions should we take? Nothing changes. You have to take exactly the same precautions that you've been taking all this while, or maybe had started to take it lightly. You have to wear your mask, double mask up if possible. All experts say double mask is better than a single mask. You need to maintain your distances. You need to ensure that you take your vaccines on time. Whenever you're eligible for the first dose, second dose, at some point a booster dose, you need to do that. You need to stay in areas with good ventilation, not in closed, camped up places. And of course, maintain your distance from other people. These are the things that we've been telling you for the past almost 2 years now. And nothing changes. The variant may have changed. Your way of dealing with it really doesn't change. Will there be a third wave? Well, the government's FAQ says Omicron cases are likely to spread to more countries. I think we're seeing that as each day progresses. The severity and the magnitude, though, of this variant is still not clear. The severity of the disease anticipated to be low, but the scientific evidence of the variant is still evolving. So initial signs show maybe it's not as serious as the previous ones, but we cannot assume right now that that's what it will be. Will existing vaccines work against the Omicron? Well, we don't have evidence to show that they will or they won't. And so that's really a wait and watch kind of a situation. But beyond this, If you have more queries or if you want to go into details of any of these aspects, our phone lines are open. Tonight, that's all we're going to do. The only way we don't feel scared, the only way we can be better prepared is by arming ourselves with facts and information. And our experts are here to help us with that. And we're going to be extremely clear about where we don't know facts and where we do know facts, where we need to know a lot more. I say good evening to Dr. Ashok Seth, cardiologist and chairman of Fortis Escorts Heart Institute, Dr. Virendra Singh Chauhan, Emeritus Professor for International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, Dr. Rajiv Das Gupta, Chairperson for the Center of Social Medicine and Community Health at JNU, member of the National COVID Task Force, and Dr. Jagdish Hirumat, Medical Director of A. Suhas Group, Dr. Rajesh Parekh of the Jaslok Hospital. Excuse me, pardon for that. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Let me start off with Dr. Chauhan. Dr. Chauhan, what do we know about the symptoms so far of this variant?
Before I answer your question, actually you lay out the problem so very clearly yourself. There's very little. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are, absolutely.
So you lay it out, so you raise the point, and many questions you've already answered. The symptoms, as we know, are mild. They're not very severe symptoms. Throat irritation in throat, mild fever. So isn't very different than the earlier virus that when Wuhan virus came. So I don't think symptoms is the issue. Is the spreadability of this virus? But as you said, the many questions that you raised, or we can discuss now, the answer to many of those questions we don't have just now. I think it'll take us a couple of weeks to look at the most important question to my mind would be, if it spreads very fast, will it take over Delta, for example? Or the most important, will it evade the vaccine? Does it have the potential to evade the either natural exposure, previous natural exposure, or vaccine-induced immunity? I don't think we have any good quality information on this. Anecdotal, small report here, there. I think it'll take a couple of weeks. By another 2 weeks, we know the pseudoviruses that have been made. That's a standard technique that we use to check the neutralizing ability of the antibodies. And eventually the real world data, that how many, if it really escapes, does it give severe disease or not? And let me clarify this confusion has remained over the years, over the months. The vaccination is really to stop severe disease acquisition or hospitalization. So breakthrough infection is not going to be something novel. Breakthrough infection will take place. Will it cause severe disease, therefore hospitalization, therefore stress your all system? I think that's what we need to prepare ourselves for. Hope for the best and prepare for the worst. That's the right now. I think we'll really need to go back, prepare everything. Now, what does prepare mean? How do we know how fast the virus is spreading? One of the major issues is the sequencing that you mentioned is really focused mostly in wealthy countries. So if you spread it fast in Europe, you'll be able to detect it very quickly. The fact that South African scientists could do it fast because they actually have very good sequencing facilities. It could have gone undetected and spread everywhere. So I think these are the tensions which we will face. You mentioned about a PCR test which might be able to guide us to initial that this may be Omicron is something the Brazilians have started using it, many other countries, but I don't think we have a standard PCR test which will guide us that, okay, there's a very good chance this is Omicron and therefore go and sequence. So let me round this up. We don't know a hell of a lot. We don't know whether it will evade vaccines or not. It does seem to transmit much more. And the initial study showed it could spread faster, but 3 to 6 times faster than Delta did. That shouldn't surprise us looking at the number of mutations in the business end of the virus, which is the spike protein. There are as many as 20, 25. But hope is this, and I am hopeful. that if the virus is becoming more spreadable, but with less severe consequences, less disease, then I think it's not a negative news. I think I'll call it a positive development, and I hope what I'm saying holds on in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks as more cases are detected. So I'll stop here and wait for your next question or any clarification. That I personally think it's something we should watch with great fascination. Let it spread faster. Let it not cause severe disease. Let it not cause more hospitalization. Let it not cause more deaths. And the exposure should come. That's what the initial virus is.
Okay.
That's what the vaccines do.
Okay, we're going to take each of those issues and talk a lot more in detail. But I want to first talk about what we know about the 2 cases that have been confirmed. And the government confirmed the 2 cases to us yesterday. One of them was a traveler from South Africa and who's now also recovered very well. None of his primary or secondary contacts showed any infection. He's recovered and gone back abroad as well. But the second one, Dr. Rajiv Das Gupta, was actually from the medical fraternity, someone with no travel history. Now, to a common man, how do we explain this? Because a lot of people that I know are only right now focusing on, people who may have traveled, people who are, getting off these flights from across the world and coming into our country. And that's what we need to be wary of.
Thank you. At least 2 things we know for sure. One, it spread quite rapidly across the world, at least 24.
I want to first talk about what we know about the 2 cases that have been confirmed. And the government confirmed the 2 cases to us yesterday. One of them was a traveler from South Africa and who's now also recovered very well. None of his primary or secondary contacts showed any infection. He's recovered and gone back abroad as well. But the second one, Dr. Rajiv Das Gupta, was actually from the medical fraternity, someone with no travel history. Now, to a common man, how do we explain this? Because a lot of people that I know are only right now focusing on, people who may have traveled, people who are, getting off these flights from across the world and coming into our country. And that's what we need to be wary of.
Thank you. At least 2 things we know for sure. One, it spread quite rapidly across the world, at least 24 countries reporting so far. 2, these cases have happened undetected in a sense in the screening procedure at borders and airports. And third, and this is what possibly answers the question related to the doctor, and perhaps several more cases may simply be waiting to be detected, that in South Africa, this has spread extremely fast. So daily infections were averaging between 200 and 300 in mid-November, but now it's gone up to 11,000 plus. So that makes it quite clear that at least in South Africa now, it's emerged as the dominant strain. Whether it will happen in India, one will have to wait and watch. But what's also equally clear from South Africa is that prior infection with Delta does not seem to be protective. However, as Professor Chauhan was saying, whether it will cause more severe disease, that cycle one will have to wait for 3 to 4 weeks. Till now, of course, most cases remain mild. That's the sort of silver lining, but then with fingers crossed.
Okay, and of course, fingers crossed, all of us are praying that the news isn't as bad as some may be dreading. But I just want to talk a little bit more about the fact that there is somebody here who's not traveled and already got 5 of that individual's contacts have tested positive. We're waiting for the results to come. And I'm simply doing this not to spread panic, but to give a sense to people, Dr. Ashok Seth, that you need to start, no matter in which part of the country you are, you need to start taking your precautions all over again. You don't have to wait for a case to be detected in your city. It's perhaps already there.
So Tanvi, while I don't want to repeat what previous speakers have said, one thing I will repeat. I was so fascinated by your introduction that it was so clear and comprehensive that I felt that we perhaps may be sitting and doing nothing for the rest of the time.
Some of that credit could go to the government because I picked up the FAQs from there.
But this is a very important aspect. While we've got to be concerned, we've got to be also cautious, but we can't be complacent. We've got to be not panicking, but we certainly got to be proactive. And I would actually want people to be concerned because I'm actually disturbed at the callousness and lack of caution on COVID appropriate behavior. So we have, and we know certain things for fact. Laboratory wise, we know the virus very well now. But what is not well understood is the clinical aspects of those mutations. And what we know on the three questions that we always ask, is the virus more virulent? Yes, that's one thing we know. What's happening in South Africa, that the virus is virulent. Will it escape the immunity? Will it escape innate immunity, which has happened as a result of previous COVID infection or due to vaccinations? The answer is we don't know that, and we will know over a period of time. But today's early reports seem to suggest from South Africa that it is actually evading innate immunity, at least of those people who had a previous Delta infection, and they're getting infected by the virus. But what is clearly not known and will be known over the next 3-4 weeks is the severity, which actually is so important because it's not whether you get a mild illness, you get a little flu, you get a little cold, you get a little body ache. But what is important, does it lead to hospital admissions? Does it lead to severe pneumonia? Does it lead to ventilation? Does it lead to death? Because that is what overwhelms the system. And I agree with Dr. Chauhan when he said that mild infection is actually in a way advantageous because it's built more innate immunity and seropositivity. Now, answering your questions that I want people to be concerned because there's a lack of COVID appropriate behavior. We have two things actually at our advantage. There's two preventive aspects that we have to run in parallel. One is clearly double vaccination. And that is known, by the way, for Alpha, for Beta, Delta, to prevent serious infections and previous death. It might not prevent us from getting a mild flu-like illness, but it could prevent us from serious infection and death, as has been seen by previous variants, including Delta variant. And secondly is the COVID-appropriate behavior. Now, I emphasize when I say COVID-appropriate behavior, and this has to go in parallel with the double vaccination, is the fact that now is the time to start understanding not to be callous. One hand, people are panicking. On the other hand, there's complete lack of COVID-appropriate behavior. I don't understand this dichotomy. It's so simple to wear a double mask. If you're wearing a cloth mask, now's the time to start wearing a 3-ply surgical 1 rupee mask under the cloth mask as you go out into the community and avoid crowding, especially indoors. And of course, for frontline workers, healthcare workers, it's always an N95 mask. But if we maintain that COVID-appropriate behavior strictly, and all people try and maintain that, and we have the double vaccination, we could prevent getting infected from any variant as close to a 99% certainty. And that's all we need to do. So we need to, in a way, panic to actually have COVID-appropriate behavior, but not panic for death and serious infections. That is what I would actually want to say.
Fair enough. One point that multiple of you have raised, and I want to address that a little bit more, is about the fact that so far the symptoms don't seem to be that serious. The number of hospitalizations have been lower. Symptoms, even the doctors who've spoken to us based out of South Africa who worked on these patients have said that it's been extremely mild symptoms, a lot of fatigue. But how do we differentiate? And is there enough data to differentiate, Dr. Rajesh Parikh, that this is not because people are vaccinated, it's actually because of the kind of variant it is?
Well, hi, Tanvi. Always a pleasure to be with you. But at the risk of being repetitive, here's a hat trick of compliments. Do prepare to bow, if at all that is possible when you're seated. Tremendous opening. I think this is one of your finest openings. You summarized, and like the other co-panelists, I was just wondering, what am I doing here? Tanvi said everything.
I have lots more questions, and I'm hoping all of you have the answers to that.
I know, but you also promised our viewers that we will try to allay their apprehensions. So your question actually dovetails right into that. You know what we've seen so far? On the 11th of November, the first 3 cases came up in Botswana, and now it is about 21 deaths. And to the best of my knowledge, there's not a single death. This is so different from what happened during the Delta variant. So what we see clearly right now is a high rate of transmissibility, but a very low or negligible rate of lethality. And which is why what Professor Chauhan said resonates with me. He in fact echoed it as a plea to the virus: go ahead, spread, but don't be lethal. And that reminded me of a famous exchange between Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr. You know, Einstein was very fond of his aphorisms: God does not play dice, and all sorts of things. And at one point, Niels Bohr told him, Einstein, please stop telling God what to do. So I think we have to stop telling the virus what to do and just watch. Yes, of course, we have to be concerned. Yes, we have to be cautious. But there is a possibility, and you know what Dr. Chauhan said resonates with me as well. There does seem to be a glimmer of hope that the high transmissibility might work in our favor. It's like the Japanese art of jujitsu, where you know, the opponent's strength actually becomes the weakness. So the fact that a highly mutated virus spreads very rapidly but does not seem to be lethal seems to be the key thing to allay our apprehensions. Now, you know, whether it evades the vaccine or not, of course, it's an important question, but it's not such a profound question. And one thing that nobody has talked about, I'd just like to, again, in the same vein of allaying apprehensions, there seems to be treatment. You know, GlaxoSmithKline has just announced that a new drug of theirs seems to work very well on this variant. So I think there's a lot to feel happy about the vaccination part of it. It's quite clear that it's more in the unvaccinated compared to the vaccinated. The molecular and genetic structure of the virus seems to indicate that with its high rate of mutation, it could possibly evade vaccine-induced immunity. But on the other hand, hey, how does that matter if it's not very lethal or severe?
Yes, how does it matter if it's not lethal or severe? Though many people, you know, and because a lot of us function in a straight-jacketed way, unfortunately, and don't really get into the nuances where they say, where many believe, vaccine le liya, to ab ho gaya. Now we are all good, we are all safe. And every time they hear about a case of a breakthrough infection, you know, that's the first response that you hear. Oh, that person was double vaccinated and still got infected. But that, Dr. Hiremath, was true even with the Delta variant. It could happen, and it can happen even with this variant.
Yeah, Tanvi, first of all, let me thank you for bringing me on the show. This is the first time I am here on your show. And what I actually want to put across are 2 important things. First one is, as of now, WHO has not informed us of any deaths which has been caused by Omicron. That means till now it is coming across as a virus which is not lethal in nature. The second part which I want to tell everyone and caution everyone is, Delta virus still is the most predominant virus in our country, and it is a virus which has been quite lethal, till now. And vaccination is the only way which we are going to protect ourselves. I agree with you when you say that vaccination is not a 100% foolproof method, but we also have to agree at the same time that it has reduced the severity of the disease to a large extent, and we are able to see people get away with infection even among stakeholders like me who are in the front line and who take care of patients in ICU. We have seen doctors who have taken both the doses of vaccine get away with very mild disease. So I suggest these are the 2 things which we need to keep in mind. One is Delta is still the predominant virus in our country, and vaccination is one thing which we need to get through to safeguard most of our people. Of course, as the other doctors did mention, we need to keep ourselves abreast with code appropriate behavior and keep ourselves and the community around safe. This is what I would like to tell.
Okay, so we're going to start taking some phone calls as well, but quick recap of where we are standing. 2 confirmed cases. But also in Hyderabad, there are 13 international passengers who've tested positive. All of these COVID positive returnees have been isolated and their samples sent for genome sequencing. In Karnataka, you know about the 2 confirmed cases. Their contacts have also been traced, many of them tested. 10 South Africa returnees are currently missing. So what happened is when this alarm went ringing in South Africa, and WHO spoke about this, that's when we started to look at people who had returned from these countries, high-risk nations, track them, trace them and test them. There are 10 of those that the Karnataka government is still trying to track and are not able to reach through, and they need to be tracked as well. 5 of the primary and secondary contacts of one of the confirmed cases have also tested positive. Their samples also sent for genome sequencing. In Andhra Pradesh, 30 returnees are missing yet to be reached out to because their mobile phones are switched off and the addresses are not working out. In Maharashtra, there are several, over 2,800 returnees from at-risk countries who've been screened, 7 people tested, others being traced. As we speak, those results will also come in the next 2-3 days. In fact, just as we got into this show, another fresh report came out, which is about the national capital, and I just want to read out that as well to you. And this is being reported this evening that there are 12 suspected cases in Delhi. Returnees, 4 from UK, 4 from France, some from Tanzania and 1 from Belgium who've tested positive. They're in the hospital. Their samples have been sent for genome sequencing to see which variant they have. So all of this is going on in the next 2-3 days. We may be looking at a very different number from what we have right now. But I want to talk about one debate that I saw going on online as well. And there's a graph that I'm sure most of our experts have seen. Data of infections and reinfections linked to Omicron, and much debate going on about the increased risk of reinfection. But there is also some disagreement on how to read this data and the charts that are there. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, I don't know if you've looked at that data and if you believe that the right way to interpret it is to say, okay, there are a higher number of reinfections, or is it to say, well, we are looking at a very low base right now, it's too soon to say large number of reinfections?
Okay. Again, if we go back to the data and the pattern emerging from South Africa, one, Delta is not protective. Neither is 2 doses of vaccine. Even in the US, there is at least 1 case with 2 doses of vaccine plus 1 booster. But then the vaccine is not an all or none game. The vaccine is meant to protect against severe disease. It still seems to be doing so. Second, with a fairly large proportion of adults vaccinated, even if with 1 vaccine, what's certainly emerging in South Africa is hospital admission among children and toddlers. And that's something we may see here, or at least we should be prepared for here, should it spread as fast as it is spreading in South Africa. Plus, with about a daily case of 10,000 and an active caseload of slightly below 2 lakh, it may not take much time in India, given this current low base, to actually dislodge Delta as the dominant strain. That's what we may see in the next 7 to 10 days.
Okay, let's take some of the viewer queries. Dr. Ashok said you wanted to add to that?
Yes, yes, just 2 things I wanted to put into perspective, and that's for the correct perspective for the audience. We don't want them to be swayed by just saying multiple times that till now it's a mild infection and so on and so forth, because it's very early days. Most of the seriousness of COVID has been realized over 10 to 14 days and what happens. So it's actually the next few days which are going to tell us about the seriousness. This is very early data. This is preliminary. And if there's been no death, we're just looking at early days. So I want to put that into perspective for public, that let's not be just believe that it's mild. Secondly, whatever you see in the lab may be looking very bad, but it may not turn out to be bad, as the sequence of mutations is not well understood in terms of how it transfers to clinical practice. And finally, when we said that we don't mind the virus infecting people, we must also remember the fact that people should not take it to a perspective they're going to get mild illness, because there's a whole spectrum of people who are immunocompromised, who actually may have lost their immunity, who are elderly, and so on and so forth, in whom we don't know how this virus will infect and could be more severe than we thought of. So I think we still have to be worried, we still have to be concerned, and we still have to fear the virus till more data emerges over the next few days.
Okay, very a valid point that you've raised here, and I hope the viewers are listening into this very important piece of advice. Let's go across to Captain Jagpal calling us from Rohtak, one of our regular viewers. Good evening, Captain Jagpal. Go ahead, please. What would you like to ask?
Tanvi, good evening. We are absolutely annoyed and cut up. You people kept us off for so long. And very, very good evening to this learned panel. I'm a 75-year-old army officer. I'm fully vaccinated. I read 4 newspapers. And if the newspaper vendor, agent, where 12, 13 boys come, they are infected. And I read this paper 4 times a day. In the morning, put it on my face, go for a nap. In the afternoon, in the evening, at night. That means I play with this virus throughout the day. What are my chances of surviving?
Okay. Thank you, Captain Jagpal, as always, for calling and asking your query. Dr. Rajesh Pai, do you want to take this question? The biggest concern here, being for the 75-year-old army man, is that he accesses 4 newspapers every day. Should he stop that subscription to avoid exposure?
Well, that's an interesting question, Captain. First of all, let me begin by thanking you for the tremendous service that you and your fellow army officers have rendered our country. Given your age, I assume you've defended this nation more than once in its past history. And all of us are here now to look after you and to defend you and to return what you've done for the country. Well, first of all, my suggestion, try not to read the newspaper 4 times a day. Once should be enough. Watch people like Tanvi. We're on an electronic medium right now. I read most of my news on the iPad, by the way. But, some of us are just used to the habit of the newspaper. It's more than reading on the paper. It's the aroma of the paper, handling of the paper. These are all important cues. If you do that, all you need to do, sir, is just wash your hands after you've handled the paper and try to avoid handling it repeatedly. There's another thing you can do, of course, and that is install a UV machine in your house. We have 2 of them in our house, and whatever papers come in, they go through a UV desanitization before we handle them. So I think a triple approach: 1, read the newspaper as infrequently as possible in the course of the day. 2, sanitize yourself, and of course, sanitize the newspaper. And if you do that, Captain, you'll be able to defend your body as well as you've defended the nation in the past.
I only heard the part where you said watch Mirror Now more, and that would be helpful. But I do want to ask a larger question since this issue has come through. Dr. Virendra Chauhan, since, the initial days when we didn't know enough about COVID itself and the original variant, the original novel coronavirus, we've come a long way. And a lot of the conversation now is about how it transmits via air. How much of the surface infection part is still a concern? On a large, newspapers is one aspect, but overall as well.
Let me just very quickly, I wanted to say something earlier and I'll say it quickly. This might be a little out of syllabus question that I'm answering. Viruses, actually, successful viruses or bacteria are those which do not try to kill the host. All a virus wants to do is to multiply, and if it can multiply in peace in large numbers and then infect, but doesn't harm the host, I think that's what viruses intend. I just do hope the virus goes that way. But I totally agree with Ashok and rest of the panel. This is the time to really be very, very cautious, extremely well prepared. Go back to what we learned about a year and a half back, or a year back, masking, washing hands, and so on. And that preparation will really prepare to deal with this virus. The question, there are many, many questions which, they're not on the center stage. The damage that has been caused by the virus with the long COVID, we need to deal with it. It will come in front of us very soon. The mental depressions, the mental issue the virus has caused, again will surface. If not today, maybe sometime later we'll be debating that. So I would only say about the transmissibility of this virus, our inability to quickly find out is there or not. And remember, the initial 2 cases which were seen in Holland really were as early as anybody saw anything in South Africa. So I had written somewhere today that our preparation should be A class, but there should be no knee-jerk, scare, panic button should be pressed about it. Of course, we need huge amount of data on this. And as I said, scientists are working overnight, weekends over, and at least 20 labs are looking at the question that you and I are asking. They've made the virus, they made the pseudovirus, they have the antibodies, they'll challenge with the infective virus particle. Just need a couple of weeks to be able to discuss it slightly better than we are discussing right now. Until that time, what Ashok and others have said, I think that's the way to go. Just prepare yourself. And I have seen in Delhi when masking was absolutely first rate, but I begin to see some of the younger people without mask. And that was Ashok was saying earlier. I just failed to understand. And I hope through the channel that we are answering some of the questions that people understand the seriousness of this. Maybe virus is not that infective. Maybe it won't kill. Maybe it's not severe. But I don't think we should compromise in our preparation. I wonder, I forgot the question that you asked.
Which is about how much through a surface does it still infect us? We would sanitize everything around us constantly, but if the virus is more about transmitting via air, then how much of that is still required?
I think the virus will, if it is a more spreadable virus, unfortunately, and I'll say it very clearly, that it will spread first. There's absolutely no question. And add a layer on this, that our inability to very quickly sequence and identify this is the current mutant we are talking about, is going to play out over that time. India, Bangladesh, these areas, we have not sequenced more than 1% of all our infections. So I think virus is there much more than we see. And we're going to soon report these cases, that there'll be more. Answering your question, will it spread through that spreadability? It is spreadability through here. I think the very early Wuhan virus impression that it spreads through surfaces, and I think that we realize that it doesn't really go from surfaces as much as we believed earlier. But that doesn't mean we should not wash our hands and should not take care of and should not clean your desk. But I think that was slightly in the early days of Wuhan virus, that was not overplayed, that I think we were just being cautious. But air to air, contact, physically sitting, taking a flight at the airport, in cinema, in mall, this is good to spread. Delta taken over the whole world. 99.9% of all viruses everywhere are the Delta strain. How did it spread? So that will happen. No need to push the panic button, but every need to be extremely cautious, careful, and not be, we'll see what happens. I think that attitude, I think social scientists are required on your channel when you have discussion last time. I think what is missing is that we want to talk about scientists like myself, vaccinologists, etc., doctors, but the fact that 50% of America doesn't wish to get vaccinated, I think those are the real questions. Yeah. Why people will not mask themselves is a question which all of us can ask. But I think some good quality social scientists must figure out is there a gap between what we tell people? Is there that people are not fearful? There are demonstration in Germany, demonstration in Australia, people want to go out. So this behavior, we understand virus behavior. It's hard to understand human behavior. So we can lament as much as we like, all of us, that go back to it. But I think this behavior, human behavior, needs to be understood and needs to be understood. And I think we need to get social scientists very seriously involved. I think doctors, vaccinologists like myself are not sufficient. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient to get this message.
So, Dr. Chauhan, I would believe is about communication, and those who are well aware and understand, along with people who can break it down for others, they really need to go out there and communicate. As we speak, and since the time Omicron has become a variant of concern, the debate in the United States has reignited. And all the anti-vaxxers are saying, see, we told you, what's the point? You went and got yourself 2 shots, and you are as vulnerable as we are today, and now this new variant has come across, and the whole circus is going to start. And somebody needs to, as a concerted effort in these countries, lots of European countries and in the United States, maybe the governments need to take it a lot more seriously in communicating it properly to people, have those ground events and sessions like we were talking in initial days. Like we spoke to our government about what your plan is going to be when you take the vaccines from cities to rural backgrounds where, all kinds of rumors and superstitions really are linked to getting a vaccine shot. And we've battled that. We've broken through those barriers. We've communicated it to the people. And that is required. But it's also about the intent of the governments in these countries. And maybe as these newer variants come in, and the cases begin to rise again and again, and we see this cycle, then maybe some of them will understand that it doesn't matter if you vaccinate a part of your country. If the rest of the world isn't, it's not going to help, and the virus will find different avatars to come back to us. Let me go across to Philip, who's on the phone line, calling us from Pune. Good evening, Philip. Go ahead. Okay, we've lost that line. Let me see if I can go across to Raghu, calling us from Karimnagar in Telangana.
Yeah.
Good evening, Raghu. Go ahead, please. What would you like to ask?
Good evening. It may be too early to pose this question, but still, as it is said that it will transmit air to air, is it safe to travel by train? Maybe too early, but still, if it is necessary, very necessary to travel by train.
Okay. Is it safe to travel by train? And if you do have to travel for certain reasons, what precautions should you take? Dr. Jagdish, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I think following the COVID appropriate behavior is the most important thing. Life needs to go on. We cannot shut down all the services. Trains, buses, flights need to carry on. The most important thing is that everybody who uses these services follow COVID appropriate behavior, respect each other's space, and contain themselves within the space and not try to be everywhere. Crowd in a contained space is one of the key reasons for increased spread of this virus. So of course, trains and flights are a risk, but since economy needs to move on, and also now we know that masks does help. So if these people follow COVID appropriate behavior and also keep themselves vaccinated, I think the risk can be reduced to the least minimum and life can go on as usual.
In fact, there are a lot of these queries about what should we do to protect ourselves better. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, would you like to weigh in as well? We've spoken about it in the last few days as well, but cannot emphasize enough. Is there anything different that we have to do for the new variant versus what we were doing since March 2020?
No, I don't think there's anything that's essentially different. But what both people as well as governments need to do is to quickly catch up on the vaccination, which the Har Ghar Dastak is designed to do. We do seem to be witnessing some initial success, both with regard to first doses as well as second doses. A jump of about 6 to 11% compared to what it was so far, and that would build up the immunity to the extent possible quickly, given that we certainly expect this variant to spread pretty fast. But other than that, well, it's precautions as usual. But three things are important as far as reinforcing that is concerned. One, and one needs to make a distinction between the first two, which is risk communication and information and education. Often these two are conflated, and that creates that actually makes for a very poor communication. And add to that the fact that structural barriers such as water, such as sanitation, hygiene, etc., for which provisioning is important, whether it's the state, whether it's the employers, whether it's the school or any other institution that that people are working or even studying in, those need to be provided by their respective institutions.
In fact, yes, I was going to ask if others want to weigh in on this. Dr. Sheth, to you first.
Just in fact, add to Dr. Rajiv's comments and say there's one other important aspect which I would request our experts in government to consider, and that's a great point of discussion right here, is the fact that it's time that 85% of the countries had a single dose to actually bring the dosing of Covishield, which revolves around 90% of the vaccination, to actually less than 3 months, 2 months and earlier. What we're seeing is a second dose hesitancy happening. And now that we've got enough vaccines, there's enough data all across the world that we need to bring this dosing to 2 months or even less. That will actually get the vaccination double dosing faster and would also get away with the second dose hesitancy, which is now proving a problem in many areas.
Okay, interesting point that you raise here. Dr. Parekh, would you like to comment on this as well?
Yes, on this, specifically on the dosing, I entirely agree with what Dr. Sheth said, but I would like to weigh in on the issue of airborne transmission. The question has come up twice, and I think the answer, the way the Omicron seems to dodge the vaccine-induced antibodies, I think some of the answers seems to have evaded the question. The question is there evidence for airborne transmission in Omicron? Yes, and it came a little early. 2 patients in Hong Kong, both not in contact with each other, but close enough. And the second patient got it. That's not absolute evidence. But a very interesting thing, Tanvi, that we wrote about in January 2020 in our first book on the coronavirus. And there's a very curious guy called F.W. Wells who worked both at Harvard and Hopkins. And in 1934, published a paper on airborne transmission. And what he showed is that as a droplet descends, say from the nostril to the floor, due to gravity, of course, there are 3 variants which influence it, and those are humidity, wind velocity, and temperature. And so, indeed, something that is not airborne, depending on these 3 parameters, can clearly become airborne. And in fact, it's known as the Wells curve. So, based on what we've seen early in Hong Kong, I don't think we can rule out entirely the possibility of airborne. Let's just assume it is there. But once again, the solution to that is simple: double masking.
Solution is simple: double mask. All right then. Quickly, I'm going to get 2 more viewers in and get their queries as well. Srivatsan calling us from Mumbai. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, all gentlemen. I just have one question to ask. Since we are looking at the new variant Omicron, and looking at the news, we come to know that there are around 50 mutations that are happening. Compared to the previous variants, there were only 2 to 3 variants. And now looking at the people who are infected, as per the news that we are watching, the infection seems to be very mild. So does that mean that the variant or the virus is losing its steam, and going forward in another 6 to 7 months, this will be like a common flu and cold that we'll be looking into? Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, would you like to take this?
Yeah, a very, very quick answer is that whether these infections are actually going to cause severe disease, including hospitalization, death, complications, etc., it's a 3-4 week cycle, and therefore we'll have to wait at least a couple of weeks to let this full spectrum of infections emerge. Also, how it is exactly going to behave in children and toddlers as increasing hospital admissions are being reported, as I said, from South Africa, again, that we will have to see, particularly in the Indian context. I'm sorry, what was the other question?
How to differentiate it between this variant and the flu?
No, at present, it is a mild infection as we are witnessing. But yeah, his question was about mutations. Yes, there are these 50 odd mutations, and it's really the genomic map that alerted particularly WHO, the Africa CDC, which led to declaring it as the variant of concern. But and that's based on some of the individual properties of these variants. But when they all come together, are they essentially going to act in an additive manner? And how a combination of these 50 will play out is something that the clinical epidemiology will show us. So that essentially is the map, and we'll have to see how this pans out into the terrain.
Actually, one very important aspect is to, when will we get our next set of exhaustive data and information? And, the cycle that you spoke about is what is important, because and almost every day people ask me, what else do we know about Omicron right now? What else can you tell us about from 10 days ago to now? What additional information do we know? And that, I think, we'll have to patiently wait and watch rather than jumping the gun on a little bit of information that comes from here or there. Dr. Sage, go ahead, please.
Yes, I was just going to weigh in and add one more aspect which people need to remember. Even if this variant, and by the way, a combination of large number of mutations doesn't necessarily mean, theoretically, it may mean the virus could be actually very infective and vicious. But practically, when it comes to clinical epidemiology, like I said, it might not, the combination of mutations may not make it more virulent, may not make it more virulent. What is important is that even if we have this virus as a mild illness, there is nothing to tell you that 2 months from now, we won't be sitting on another variant, which could be far more virulent than what we've seen till now. And therefore, that brings us to the very important aspect that till everything goes into endemicity, and we're going to have a second generation of vaccines, till then, we'll continue to behave ourselves, continue to have all the precautions, continue to have our social activities in place. Our masking and social distancing and hygiene should become a norm with us. And in the same manner, better vaccination and perhaps dedicated boosters would be around the corner in a few weeks' time for all forms of viruses. So I think we must remember that this is not the final variant that we're seeing at the moment.
Okay, let me go across to Swati on the phone line calling us from Bhopal. Hi Swati, good evening. Go ahead please, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, hi, good evening everyone. My question is that always the kids are the most susceptible ones, it seems, in this virus also, and the under 25 are getting more infected as the data is coming from other countries. But we still don't have any vaccination plans for kids. They are going to coaching, at least in my state, they have started going to coaching, and the schools are on. And, most of these kids follow very poor behavior. Now, what do we do about that? They can't be stopped from going for their classes, coaching and all that, and we don't have any vaccination plan.
Well, we are hoping that in the coming few weeks, there will be a detailed plan from the government's end about vaccination for children. Dr. Rajiv Das Gupta, would you want to shed any more light on that?
Well, we are awaiting a policy decision on this.
Yeah.
But what seems to be headed in the direction at present is, even within children, prioritize the more immunocompromised and across the board immunization for children. That will perhaps wait. We'll have to wait a bit. That seems to be the understanding at present.
Yes, that just like we did for adults, where there was a priority chart laid out and a plan, perhaps with children as well, we will see the same. I have a quick question, and Dr. Chand, maybe you can take this. We don't know yet, so there's no point in speculating whether the existing vaccines will work and work to the same extent on this variant. But if we had to say that they don't, then how quickly do you think the existing vaccines can be changed and the newer vaccine brought into the market? Because we're hearing a lot of commentary from various vaccine makers of how quickly they can do so. And I want to, just bring in neutral view here without honestly putting 100% trust into a vaccine maker's claim.
So quickly, I wanted to actually come in earlier, but I'll just make 2 points. One is answer to your question. The first is the fourth wave in Europe, especially in England, has happened when the vaccination rates are as much as 80%. This point has been clarified by all of us repeatedly. So England has seen as many as 30, 40,000. US has seen as many as 100,000 infection, despite high rate of vaccination, especially in England. So it only tells us, and I repeat that, but the deaths of those who were fully vaccinated, there are hardly any deaths have happened. So vaccines are, please do not think vaccine will protect you from getting a breakthrough infection, because they never claimed that. The question that you asked me, Moderna and Pfizer both have already claimed, and this is true because tweaking of mRNA vaccine according to the sequence of S protein is really very, very quick. Remember, the first vaccine shot in human arms of Moderna was within 63 days of sequence of virus becoming available on 11th of January. So new vaccines can be made very, very quickly. They are saying within 3 months, we will be in people. Of course, they need to be tested again. No matter what you do, you still have to test them. Maybe not a phase 3 trial, but some safety trial will have to be done. So answer your question, they can be done quick. Do we need them immediately? I think that has to be watched continuously. I again will repeat, in a couple of weeks' time, we have much stronger evidence from the lab and some more evidence from the real world that whether these are escaping the vaccine-induced immunity to severe disease and hospitalization. That point needs to be understood very, very by all of us. Look at fourth wave in Europe. Huge number of people got infection, Delta infection. And they were all vaccinated, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson, name the vaccine, they were all given to them. So these two things must not be confused. We must vaccinate as many people as quickly as we can, because it saves us from going to hospital and from death.
Okay, very quickly, just on this part, because we had information coming in today that the INSACOG has, suggested that we start looking at booster doses for the vulnerable category above the age of 40. Dr. Parekh, do you think now is the time for that?
Absolutely. I mean, that time was quite some time ago. Tanvi, there's something I'd like to add. And there's a difference in the way we've now got to look at disease in a post-vaccinated world as opposed to a pre-vaccinated world. See, there is a dashboard that people like me, and my responsibility as Director of Research at Just Look Hospital, necessitates that I track disease on a daily basis. And on the dashboard, in the pre-vaccinated world, we were looking at how many people were getting infected. Of course, we were looking at how many are seriously ill and how many are dying. But just as in a car, when you drive a car, the dashboard gives you a tachometer or a speedometer, tons of information on the dashboard. And there are times when you focus just on the speed, particularly when you're approaching a policeman who's going to stop you if you're speeding a lot. I think the new dashboard we need to look at now is actually hospitalization and deaths. We need to divest our attention a bit from the number of people who are falling ill. And we really need to now focus our debate in people who have been vaccinated on serious illness. Because look at it. I mean, everybody gets a common cold in the world today. A huge number of people get the flu. And of course, still a lot of number of people die of the flu. It's estimated over 15,000 in the UK alone. But I think our attention in a post-vaccinated world is going to move towards hospitalization and death rather than on infections, which of course reiterates the importance of vaccination.
Yes, and a lot of experts keep saying that, but I think the real change in the way we react to this will only come when the policymakers, the governments and the people actually begin to believe that your world may not come crashing down just because you've been infected, as long as you are able to fight it and not end up in a hospital. And vaccine is a good way of ensuring that that doesn't happen. So the cases may rise, but we shouldn't panic. We shouldn't panic until we get more information. This is what we have. It's a lot more of wait and watch. Meanwhile, you don't have to do anything different than what you've been doing so far. In the last few months, if you became a little laid back about it, if you became a little casual about our COVID protocols, now is the time to get back to all of those precautions that you used to take. Hygiene, double mask, and maintaining distance. That is all that you can do just the way you battled the COVID all of this time, even in the future. A big thank you to all of the panelists for joining me on this confirmation. A pleasure, as always.